Welcome to Bella's World, where real-life drama meets spicy secrets. Subscribe to never miss a new story.
I don't understand why everyone's acting like I committed murder, so I didn't tell him the baby might not be his. So what? He should have been grateful I even stayed with him. Nathan wasn't father material anyway, and deep down we both knew it from the start. I gave him 2 years of playing daddy, and now he's acting like I owe him something more than that. The day those DNA results came back, definitively proving that Nathan wasn't Emma's biological father, I felt like my entire carefully constructed world was about to collapse around me. I'm sitting here staring at this official piece of paper that completely ruined my perfect setup, and I still can't believe how everything went so wrong so incredibly fast. All that time and energy I spent convincing Nathan he was going to be such an amazing dad. All those months of pretending to be the perfect pregnant wife and devoted mother, and it turns out none of it mattered at all because he wasn't even the real father and never had been. But let me back up and tell you exactly how this whole complicated mess started, because honestly I'm still trying to figure out where everything went wrong and how I ended up in this nightmare situation. I'm Vanessa, 29, and until 2 weeks ago I thought I had this whole situation completely under control. Nathan and I had been married for 3 years, and we'd been trying for a baby for almost 2 of those years. He was excited about becoming a dad, but honestly, I could see right through his desperate act. He worked these incredibly long and boring hours at some accounting firm downtown, came home exhausted and grumpy every single night, and spent his weekends watching sports on the couch like some middle-aged loser. That's not father material. That's just a pathetic guy who wants to feel important and needed for once in his completely unremarkable life. About 3 years ago, I genuinely believed I was living some kind of perfect fairy tale life. Nathan was this stable and reliable guy who seemed to have his entire life completely together. Decent, steady income from his boring job, nice house in the suburbs that we'd bought together with both our names on the mortgage. And he was always talking endlessly about how much he wanted children and a big happy family. He seemed like the absolutely perfect husband material, even if he wasn't exactly exciting or passionate or romantic or anything remotely interesting like that. The major problem was that Nathan was just so incredibly boring and predictable and routine all the time. He never wanted to go out and do anything fun or spontaneous, never surprised me with romantic gestures or thoughtful gifts, never made me feel like I was special or beautiful or desirable the way a woman should feel in a marriage. He treated our entire relationship like some kind of boring business partnership where we split bills exactly down the middle and divided household chores and had scheduled intimacy exactly twice a week, like clockwork. I started feeling like I was slowly dying inside from all the endless routine and mind-numbing monotony of our supposedly perfect suburban life. That's when Eric came back into my life last spring out of absolutely nowhere. Eric was my college boyfriend from years ago, the one who got away, the one who used to make my heart race and keep me awake all night thinking about him and our future together. He reached out to me on social media completely unexpectedly, saying he was going to be in town for a work conference and wondered if I wanted to catch up over drinks for old time's sake. I knew I probably shouldn't agree to meet him, but I was so desperately starved for excitement and adventure and genuine passion that I said yes anyway without even thinking about the potential consequences. One innocent drink at a downtown hotel bar turned into 3 drinks, which turned into Eric walking me out to my car in the parking garage and kissing me passionately against the driver's side door like we were 21 years old again and madly in love. I felt more alive and desired and genuinely happy in that single moment than I had in literally years of marriage to boring, predictable Nathan. Eric suggested we get a hotel room upstairs and continue catching up properly, and I said yes immediately, without even hesitating. I quickly texted Nathan that I was having an impromptu girls' night with my sister Miranda and would probably be home very late, so he shouldn't wait up for me. The entire night with Eric was absolutely incredible, and everything I'd been missing in my mundane marriage. He made me feel beautiful and wanted and alive again in ways I'd completely forgotten were possible. We talked for hours about all our old college dreams and ambitious plans and how completely different our lives could have been if we'd stayed together after graduation instead of going our separate ways. Eric told me he'd never stopped thinking about me over all these years and that seeing me again had proved to him that we were meant to be together and always had been. I believed every single word because I wanted so desperately to believe that someone could actually love and desire me the way Eric seemed to. The next morning, Eric had to catch an early flight back to his job in Seattle. He promised he would call me as soon as he got settled and said we'd figure out a way to be together permanently because what we had was too special to waste. I went home to Nathan feeling guilty but also more excited about life and my future than I'd been in years. I kept telling myself that what happened with Eric was just a one-time thing, a moment of weakness and nostalgia that didn't really mean anything serious in the long run. Then exactly 3 weeks later, I missed my period for the first time in years. I took 4 different pregnancy tests from 3 different brands, and they all came back positive with those unmistakable double pink lines. I sat on our bathroom floor trying desperately to figure out the timing and realized with growing panic that it could have been either Nathan or Eric who got me pregnant. Nathan and I had been intimate that exact same week I spent the night with Eric because we were supposedly actively trying to get pregnant at that point in our marriage. The timing made it completely impossible to know for absolutely certain without expensive DNA testing who the biological father actually was. I made the decision not to tell Nathan anything about Eric or my uncertainty about the baby's paternity. Nathan was so incredibly excited and happy when I told him I was finally pregnant that I couldn't bear to ruin his joy and destroy his dreams of fatherhood. He immediately started talking enthusiastically about converting our spare bedroom into a beautiful nursery and buying adorable baby clothes and making all these elaborate plans for our future as a complete family. I convinced myself that it honestly didn't matter who the biological father was, because Nathan would be the one actually raising and loving the baby daily, and that's what really counted in the end. Eric called me several times during my first trimester, but I stopped answering his calls and eventually blocked his number completely. I decided that entire chapter of my life was permanently over and I needed to focus completely on my marriage and the baby that was coming. Nathan was going to be the father in every meaningful way, regardless of biology, and Eric didn't need to know about any of it. It seemed like absolutely the right thing to do at the time to protect everyone involved and give the baby the most stable possible life. The pregnancy went incredibly smoothly and Nathan was honestly the perfect expectant father throughout the entire 9 months. He came with me to every single doctor's appointment without complaining, read dozens of parenting books and baby care manuals, carefully assembled the expensive crib we'd picked out together, and painted the nursery a beautiful soft yellow colour since we wanted to be surprised about the gender until birth. I started feeling genuinely happy and optimistic about our little growing family, and convinced myself that the baby was probably Nathan's anyway, since that seemed like the most logical and likely outcome given the timing. Emma was born on a Tuesday morning in March after exactly 12 hours of labour. She was absolutely perfect and beautiful, and when Nathan held her for the very first time, he started crying tears of joy and said she was the most amazing thing he'd ever seen in his entire life. I felt so much overwhelming love watching him with our precious daughter that I was absolutely certain I'd made the right choice in not telling him about Eric and the paternity uncertainty. Nathan was Emma's real father in every single way that actually mattered. For 2 completely wonderful years, everything was absolutely perfect in our little family. Nathan was an incredible and devoted dad who got up for middle-of-the-night feedings without ever complaining, changed dirty diapers cheerfully, read bedtime stories every single night, and spent all his weekends taking Emma to the park and patiently teaching her to walk and talk. I felt completely vindicated in my decision because clearly Nathan and Emma belonged together, and biology was just a meaningless technicality that didn't matter at all. Then last month, Nathan's accounting company required all employees to participate in comprehensive genetic testing for their new health insurance plan. It was supposed to be routine screening for hereditary diseases and genetic conditions that might affect coverage and premiums. Nathan came home excited because he said we'd finally know definitively if Emma might inherit his family's long history of heart problems or my family's genetic tendency toward diabetes and other health issues. The results came back exactly 2 weeks ago, and that's when my entire world fell apart completely. Nathan called me from his office, sounding confused and deeply upset. He said the genetic testing had definitively shown that Emma couldn't possibly be his biological daughter based on their DNA markers and genetic profiles. He was leaving work immediately and coming home early because we needed to have a serious conversation about what this meant for our marriage. I spent the entire hour before Nathan got home trying desperately to figure out what I was going to say to him. Part of me wanted to confess everything about Eric and explain the whole complicated situation honestly. But another much larger part of me was absolutely furious that Nathan was making such a huge deal about some stupid test results when he'd been Emma's loving father for 2 entire years already. Did biology really matter more than love and commitment and daily care and emotional bonding? When Nathan finally walked through the front door, he looked exactly like someone had died unexpectedly. He sat down heavily at our kitchen table and put his head in his hands like he was carrying the weight of the entire world. He said he'd been thinking about nothing else all day, and he needed me to be completely honest with him about what had happened during our marriage. Had I cheated on him? Was there someone else who could possibly be Emma's biological father? I looked at Nathan sitting there looking so hurt and betrayed and devastated, and I felt this sudden surge of anger instead of the guilt I probably should have been feeling. He was acting like I'd completely ruined his entire life when all I'd actually done was give him the family he'd always claimed he wanted more than anything. I told him that yes, there had been someone else briefly, but it was just one meaningless night that didn't change anything important. I said Emma was still his daughter in every single way that actually mattered, and some random DNA test couldn't possibly change that fundamental truth. Nathan stared at me like he'd never seen me before in his entire life. He said he couldn't believe I'd deliberately lied to him for over 2 years about something so incredibly important and fundamental to our relationship. He said he felt like our entire marriage and family was built on lies and deception, and he didn't know who I really was anymore or if anything about our life together had ever been real. I told him he was being completely overdramatic and that plenty of families successfully deal with complicated paternity situations all the time. That's when Nathan said he needed time to think clearly, and he was going to stay at his brother's house for a few days until he could process everything. I told him he was being absolutely ridiculous and that Emma needed her father at home with us. He said he wasn't actually her father, and that was the whole devastating problem. I got so angry at his selfishness that I said something I probably shouldn't have said. I told him he was just a temporary dad anyway, and he should be grateful I let him play house for as long as I did. Nathan looked at me with this expression of complete disgust and said he was filing for divorce immediately and would be in touch through his lawyer about custody arrangements for Emma. I actually laughed out loud and told him he had absolutely no legal rights to Emma since she wasn't biologically his child. He said we'd see about that and walked out the door with his hastily packed suitcase. That was exactly 2 weeks ago, and Nathan hasn't been back to our house even once since then. He won't answer any of my phone calls or respond to my increasingly desperate text messages. I thought he was just being dramatic and would come home once he cooled off and realized how much he genuinely missed Emma and me. Instead, he had official divorce papers delivered by a professional process server last Friday afternoon. The absolute worst part of this entire nightmare is that literally everyone is taking Nathan's side like I'm some kind of evil monster. My sister Miranda called me crying hysterically and said she couldn't believe I'd deceived Nathan so cruelly after everything he'd done for our family. She said he was honestly the best thing that had ever happened to me, and I'd thrown it all away for absolutely no good reason. I tried desperately to explain that the situation was much more complicated than it appeared on the surface, but she wouldn't listen to anything I had to say. My best friend Jessica stopped talking to me completely after Nathan told her exactly what had happened. Jessica always had an obvious crush on Nathan anyway, so I'm not surprised she's automatically taking his side against me. Even my own mother said she was deeply disappointed in me, and that I should have been honest from the very beginning, regardless of the consequences. Everyone is acting like I committed some completely unforgivable sin, when all I actually did was protect Nathan from painful information that would have destroyed him. The ironic thing is that Eric never even responded when I finally called him last week to tell him about Emma and the possibility that she might be his daughter. His phone number was disconnected, and when I looked him up on social media, I discovered he'd gotten married 6 months ago to some young girl from his hometown. So much for all his passionate promises about us being meant to be together forever. He got exactly what he wanted from me and then disappeared back to his real life like I'd never existed at all. Now I'm completely stuck alone in this house with Emma, while Nathan is apparently already dating someone new, according to our mutual friends who seem to enjoy updating me on his life. People keep telling me I should try to get child support from Eric, but I don't even know how to contact him, and besides, he made it perfectly clear he's not interested in being involved in Emma's life. I'm looking at potentially losing our house because I can't afford the mortgage payments on just my salary alone. The hardest part of everything is trying to explain to Emma why Daddy doesn't live here anymore. She keeps asking when Nathan is coming home, and I honestly don't know what to tell her. She's only 2 years old, but she clearly misses him terribly and doesn't understand why he suddenly disappeared from her life without any explanation. It absolutely breaks my heart watching her look hopefully for him every single time someone comes to the front door. Last week I tried calling Nathan from a different phone number so he couldn't immediately hang up on me. When he answered, I begged him to reconsider the divorce and think seriously about Emma's needs. I told him that regardless of biology, he was still her father in every meaningful way, and she desperately needed him in her life. Nathan said he'd been thinking about that exact thing, and he was consulting with family lawyers about potential adoption or custody arrangements for Emma. I told him that wasn't necessary at all, because Emma and I were doing perfectly fine on our own without his help. Nathan said that obviously wasn't true, and that Emma deserved to have a loving father figure who actually wanted to be in her life permanently. He said he'd realized over the past few weeks that he did genuinely love Emma regardless of genetics, but he couldn't stay married to someone who'd lied to him about something so fundamental to their entire relationship. I asked Nathan if we could at least try marriage counseling, or if there was any possible way to work through this situation together as a family. He said the trust was completely and permanently broken, and he couldn't imagine ever believing anything I told him again. He said he'd spent 2 years living a complete lie, and he couldn't continue pretending our marriage was real when it had been built on deception from the very beginning. The divorce proceedings are moving forward rapidly, and Nathan's expensive lawyer is aggressively pushing for joint custody of Emma, even though Nathan has absolutely no legal parental rights. My lawyer says it's legally complicated because Nathan has been acting as Emma's father since birth and has developed a strong emotional bond with her. The court might actually grant him some kind of custody arrangement based on what's in Emma's best interests rather than strict biological parentage. Meanwhile, I'm struggling to pay bills and take care of Emma completely by myself, while Nathan is apparently thriving in his new single life. Our friends tell me he seems happier and more relaxed than he's been in years. He's been going out and socializing regularly and even started dating someone from his office. It's like losing his fake family was actually liberating for him instead of devastating the way I expected. I keep thinking about what I could have done differently, but honestly, I still don't think I was completely wrong in my decisions. Nathan got to experience being a devoted father for 2 wonderful years, which is something he'd always claimed he wanted more than anything. Emma got to have a loving daddy who cared for her and provided for her completely. I protected Nathan from painful information that would have destroyed him during my pregnancy. Everyone benefited from my decision to keep quiet about the paternity uncertainty. The only thing I genuinely regret is telling Nathan he was just a temporary dad. That was cruel and completely unnecessary, and I only said it out of anger and hurt. But everything else I did was specifically to protect our family and try to give everyone involved the best possible outcome. I couldn't have predicted that some random genetic testing would expose everything, or that Nathan would react so extremely to finding out the truth. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd been completely honest from the beginning. Maybe Nathan would have been supportive and helped me figure out the paternity situation properly. Maybe he would have chosen to raise Emma regardless of biology. But I also think there's a very good chance he would have left me during the pregnancy and Emma would have grown up without any father figure at all. Now I'm facing the terrifying possibility of being a struggling single mother with no support system and no financial help from either potential father. Emma is going to grow up thinking her daddy abandoned her, and it's going to be entirely my fault for creating this whole complicated mess. I thought I was being smart and protective, but maybe I was just being selfish and cowardly. The worst part is realizing that Nathan was actually a much better man than I gave him credit for. He wasn't boring or weak or temporary like I convinced myself. He was steady and reliable and genuinely loved being a father more than anything. I threw away the best thing in my life because I was bored and wanted excitement and adventure. Now I have neither excitement nor stability, and Emma is the one who's really paying the price for my selfishness. I keep waiting for Nathan to change his mind and come back to us. But every day that passes makes it increasingly clear that he's moved on permanently. He found out who I really was underneath all the lies and deception, and he decided he didn't want that person in his life anymore. I can't really blame him, even though it hurts more than I ever imagined possible. Yesterday, Emma said her first complete sentence, and it was asking where Daddy went. I told her Daddy was just working, but she's smart enough to know that's not true. She can tell something fundamental has changed in our family structure, and she doesn't understand why the most important person in her world just disappeared one day. I'm the one who has to live with causing that pain and confusion for an innocent child who never asked for any of this. I realize now that I was completely wrong about Nathan being temporary. He was actually the most permanent and stable thing in Emma's entire life, and I destroyed that because I couldn't handle my own guilt and uncertainty. I thought I was protecting everyone, but really I was just protecting myself from having to face the consequences of my choices. Now everyone is suffering because of my selfishness, and there's no way to undo the damage I've caused to our family.
Subscribe to never miss a new story.